On today's show, we find out what it's like living on a sailboat as a blind woman with guest Tiffany Taylor. And is canned soup a pantry lifesaver or a salty saboteur? Chef Mary Mammoliti weighs in with the ultimate soup showdown. We sail into these conversations next.
This is Kelly and Company.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly and Co AMI. I welcome in Nazreen Abdel-Majid, our technical producer for the program and does so many different things at AMI Audio. Niz, how's things today?
Pretty good. It's buzzing on social media today.
Oh, I like that. Well, I think, Niz, when we talk about how much time you enjoy spending out there, how much time you pick up on these different little things, and people, we love you to go out and talk to Nizreen and see the content she's putting out and interact. I have to say, Niz, I'm sure sometimes it drives you bananas.
Way to intro that, Kels. Thank you for that introduction. Because I have a story about a banana. A viral duct taped banana sells for $6.2 million at the Sotheby's art auction in New York. And yes, you heard me right. A simple banana duct taped to a wall sold for $6.2 million at an auction in New York City on Wednesday, with the winning bid coming from a prominent cryptocurrency entrepreneur, Justin Sun.
Of
The
course.
bidding started at $800,000, and within minutes, Kels shot up to 2 million, then 3
Wow.
million, then 4 million, and higher. As the auctioneer Oliver Bart said, he said, "quote These are words I've never thought I'd say, but $5 million for a banana." End quote. The final hammer price announced in the room was $5.2 million. That was the final bid, and which didn't include the about $1 million in auction house fees paid by the buyer. So in total, $6.2 million for a duct taped banana to a wall.
Okay.
I can't.
Okay.
I'm flabbergasted. I'm
But did the
baffled by
wall
this.
go with it?
That's what I'm asking.
That's one
what
of
I
my
was
questions.
wondering at the same time.
Yeah.
Did they cut the wall, or did they actually take the duct tape off of the banana and
And
take
you
it
can't do
home?
that. You'd
Yeah.
have to just pull it off. The duct tape would have to stay on this rotten old banana. I wonder how old. And you know how many shades of black it's turned anyway. It's really interesting when you just see what people will do. And to me, there's no rhyme or reason. Like, it's not like, how come this particular banana? Because it's taped to a wall? Or did the queen, when she was alive, did she come over and put her finger on it and say, ew, oh my, or something?
No, people
What
just call
brought
it
the
art.
value?
Yeah,
Ah.
people just call it art. Simple banana
Mhm.
duct tape to a wall, as you can see in this image right here. But it's just when I think about these types of items that get sold for millions of dollars, it just makes me so frustrated that people are willing to pay this amount of money for something like this, something so
Are you one of those
ridiculous.
people that gets mad at, athletes or actors when they get a ridiculous amount of money to do something? Like be in a
It's not
movie
that
or a
It's
contract?
when they spend on the ridiculous items. Like, you can put that money into charity, and I know, like, this is
Art?
like, there's so many important, yeah, like, there's so many important you know uh campaigns or anything like that that you can put that money into, not a simple banana that's duct taped to a wall, and you can call it art. In fact, it was actually called comedian. And then Justin Sun even got like a certificate, uh basically saying that he is the official owner of this art piece. So I don't know. Like, what do you think, Kels? I feel like I just get frustrated when people pay a certain amount of money for ridiculous things. Like, there's a high brand out there. I'm not gonna say the name here because I can't even pronounce it. But anyway, there's a high brand that they had tape, a roll of tape as a bracelet, and people paid so much money for it.
Man, if I
It
had
was
known
it
that when I was 6 years old, I would've made money. I used to wear bracelets of tape all the time when my dad
a
was working.
simple,
Eh,
yeah.
It's hardness because I can't sit here and condone an actor for getting $25 million to do some ridiculous film, or a Major League Baseball player that says, "Yeah, I'll sign for 10 years with a team for $600 million plus," or whatever.
Right.
I can't fault that because if they're worth it in our minds, and like they say, something is only worth what you're willing to pay. And I'm certainly, as an artist, not somebody who's gonna sit there and say, "Well, I don't like to see that." Can I stop and say, "Yeah, okay, if people can do that, how come there's starving people in this world? How come we have other struggles in
Right.
areas that we shouldn't have?" Not that I put it on said wealthy person to solve all the problems and use their
Yeah, of
money to
course.
solve all the
Of
problems of the
course.
world, but it just seems so, whoa, off
I think there's
balance
just
that
better things that the money could go to, not
for sure,
I don't know, like,
for
maybe
sure.
I'm being shallow about this where I don't see the art in this banana.
You don't see the art in this art. You know, that
In this
just be
art,
careful you
yeah,
don't slip
like
on it.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to
Mhm.
speaking of art, ask Art Malec, otherwise known as Christine Malec, our of course, our arts consultant, to join us for this conversation. Chris, you hear me kind of waffling because as an artist, I don't want to say, "Oh, well, Chris or Kelly's work isn't worth that." Because if someone was willing to pay me $6+ million to sit there and say, do this or do that, or this is Kelly doing on air, wow, I'm willing to pay to watch that. I'm not going to turn it down.
Well, I wouldn't turn it down either, but I'm an artist. But first of all, I'm a human. I'm a human being. And to be honest, I'm a socialist. I'm a lefty. And so if you paid me $6 million for something, I'd probably like take a lot of it and spread it around because that's just what I think should happen with money. And
Mhm.
to call something art and then say, oh, therefore it's okay that it's worth $6 million, that just does not compute for me. There's nothing in the art world, nothing that's worth $6 million. I feel like Nazreen, like, I just think it's sort of disgusting, really.
So
Yeah.
and again, I hear you. I mean, there's so much of that, including people's work where you say, do you need to be paid that amount of money? You'll never spend. We can go on forever. And I think it's a great key thing. What are you going to do with that money? Well, Chris, I know myself, I used to always say, "Hey, if I ever won a lottery, I'm opening a theater space that's going to
Oh,
showcase blind art, blind theater,
aw.
blind singing," because for me, I'd have a ball rolling out
Mhm.
artists, community theater, professional theater, singers, and whatever, and bringing them to this space and employing disabled
Mhm,
people. That's just
mhm.
something,
Mhm.
during my years of frustration. So, I mean, originally it was a radio station, of course, that I was going to do that with, and
Yeah.
then it became, as I got working in the field, more art. As I got running theater troops, it was more of the thing I was interested in doing. So I hear you. I'm curious. What do you think with your philanthropy, if that was the case, Christine, what would you do with that money? What's a couple of the things?
Oh my gosh. I think I'd just start out really basic, like food bank, make sure people have enough to eat. I'm not a big like project thinker, so it never occurred to me like, oh, I could start a school for like
Right.
I would trust other people to administer something like that. But I really feel strongly that we have a real need to spread it around. But don't get me wrong, I want to be
Yeah.
paid, and this is
Yeah.
something as
Yeah.
disabled
Yeah.
people that we've been thinking about for a long time is getting paid for our work and our expertise.
And fighting for it for a long time. Nisreen, do you ever
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
about people, celebrities out there? Would you wanna know what things they are funding, supporting, whether they be charities or what kinds of human benefiting things they are a part of? I can't come out with the word I want for this. Do you ever think about that, or if you heard about it, would you kind of just, yeah, it's interesting. We're finding out that that person who gets paid $20 million a year to do this and that, and we're hearing about the charities. I think they must really have a battle of, do we disclose? Are people going to take
Mhm.
it as a legitimate thing or a cost of doing business?
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to know where the money is being put, of course. For example, when I hear about a celebrity sending money to like Palestine, this amount of money, I kind of want to know, is this just for business? Or is it actually accurate that they are sending money? Because they can easily say, oh, for example, any celebrity, Justin Bieber is sending this amount of millions of dollars to this charity. and there's no kind of proof of that anywhere. So is this just for show, or is this um accurate information? That's what I wonder.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, guys, like I am not an artist myself, so for somebody to for me to say I don't find a banana duct taped to a wall is like not art. I don't want to sound like conceited, but I just think there's so many better opportunities that the money can go to. And it's not even like, yeah, of course charity is very important, but it's also to spend on yourself. Like if you want to travel around the world, that's something worth it. That like there's so many things that are worth that money. But if you're saying this piece for this amount of money, I don't know, it like it gives me the shivers. Like, let's just say that.
Me too.
Well,
Me too.
no, maybe he needs a maybe he's got maybe he's deprived of, potassium or something like that, but what color is that donut? Banana. Is it, can you see it, Miss, to see what
Yellow.
color it is?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
really? How does
it
it
looks
stay
like a
yellow?
nice yellow. That's what
Is
I'm
it so
saying. It's gonna
is it
get
a
bruised
fake
pretty
banana?
quickly.
It must be fake, right? It must be like that's the art. It must be made, right? That's not
It
an
looks
actual
pretty
real
real.
banana. Ew.
But if it's real, that 6.2 is gone.
Well, and then he
Like
just made it
think
too,
about
right?
it
He
that
just
way. It's
I
gonna be
keep thinking
black
of
in a
things
couple
like
of
it's
days.
yeah, like I keep thinking that thing's been around for a while just because, ew, a yucky banana. All
Gonna
right.
get
Well, thank
moldy.
you. Thank you for the skim on that one. That's an interesting story, an interesting drop of cash. Miss Malik, we've brought you to the program to talk a little bit about trends. You're here today to talk about some highlights what you've got for us, latest trends in accessibility out there for the blind and low vision community. Audio description for TV and movies is something that I think, I'd like to believe, somewhat can take for granted, but accessibility and inclusion aren't static. There are many different initiatives out there that we need to broaden and deepen our access to arts and culture. Chris, you're an accessibility consultant out there and, of course, creator. Tell us about some of the more innovative things you have been seeing.
There's I'd say there's sort of two ways that this happens. One is podcasting,
Hmm.
and the other is events, making events themselves, getting there more accessible and experiencing them. So I'm going to talk maybe about the podcasts first because that's sort of in the pandemic. This is when I noticed this happen, and JJ Hunt and I worked on the Talk Description to Me podcast, and JJ also does this amazing work, which is kind of a we call it a deep dive. So for example, JJ did a series for AMI that was a deep dive into James Bond. And so they were AMI was running all of the James Bond films with audio description, but then you had this access to JJ doing, it was like 4 or 5, 6 episodes, and he would break down the, say, the aesthetics of the cars, or the co-lead actors, or the women in James Bond, or what he wore, or the
Right.
gadgets, or even just the cinematography of how that evolved over the course of the Bond franchise. And so things like that. And more recently, this is so brilliant. The Disability Collective, which I want to talk about more in a few different contexts, they operate out of Toronto, and they are a disability led collective that want to bring the arts to make them more accessible for the disabled community, but also to make sure that disabled artists get paid. Yay! See, we all want money. We all need it.
It's
We all need it.
full circle here.
But
We keep
full
talking about, and
circle. I know. I don't
and
need six
funny enough,
million though.
it's only fair. Yeah, you don't need 6 million, right? They don't probably
No,
need six
no,
million
no, I
yet.
don't.
Yet,
Yeah,
not
I
yet.
don't. I never need 6 million. I never need 6 million. But what they did recently was the Rocky Horror Picture Show was screened at a theater. In front of the screen, there was a shadow cast. This is so amazing. There was a shadow cast of deaf performers who were sort of enacting the film, but using sign for their dialogue. And they did something called sign singing, which involves a sort of more flowy version, I guess, of sign language, of ASL, but that indicates that you're singing. And then there's JJ in the back booth doing audio description into your little earbud, and he's describing the film, the shadow cast, what's going on in the crowd. And so
Wow. Wow.
there's just so much stuff going on, and the podcast is a particularly great form, and we really want this to take off more. Like our, especially JJ, this is work he'd really love to do, is to go to, say, uh let's just go where the money is, like the big
Mhm.
media companies
Mhm.
like Paramount or something, and get them to fund a deep dive podcast series, because podcasts are accessible to the blind community, and they're an easy way to give a deep dive content, really dive into something
I'm
in it.
even noticing that kind of thing with Stratford. Of course, when we talk, sometimes descriptions, show notes, and being more available from the directors. And I love any of that stuff. Now, again, that is something from the director that doesn't necessarily have to be just for the low vision or blind community. I know I saw an audio described version of a musical last year, Frankenstein, that they put on. No speaking at all. But so the describer was constantly in your ear telling you everything. It was a real marathon for the work that she had to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
But my gosh, I'm not a big musicals person for that very reason. What are you
Mhm.
not going to know about? What are you going to miss? It's the
Mhm.
story. There was so much that you got from it, as
Mhm.
well as enjoying the beautiful music. No singing, so you're not interfering with the singing going on. It was
Ah.
colossal, different.
Well, and they do
Not taking a shot
tactile
at one.
tours too.
Oh, for
Like,
sure. And
yeah. Yeah.
I think we kinda get mixed on the benefits of some of that stuff, but I love when there are opportunities to do some of that, even if you're seeing stuff after the show. Yeah,
Mhm.
obviously before the show tends to be better, but I love the idea of the podcast because it's available. You don't have to be so technically inclined to enjoy and get that benefit.
Yeah, and so the Disability Collective took JJ did elaborate pre-show notes for the Rocky
Yes, we
Horror. So
heard
there's,
that too.
aren't they so amazing? So those are
Oh, yeah.
available as podcasts. And so if you Google Disability Collective podcasts, you'll find their podcast page, and there's two there. So say you don't live in Toronto, you don't live somewhere where there's a thriving sort of lots of accessible art, you can still get at it. It's still available for people.
And it's important, Chris, because if we are getting people presenting or like you talk about the bigger companies out there when they're sponsoring, we used to always hear closed captioning sponsored by. Well, not
Mhm.
used to hear it all the
You
time if
still
you're a
do.
TV
Yeah.
watcher. And for any
Mhm.
events like this, audio description. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for those groups.
Mhm.
I've had people talk to me about our Grand Theater here in London recently and wishing we could just get some audio description, some shows like we do Stratford, like what goes on in Toronto.
Yeah.
And there's always, well, we haven't had a lot of feedback for that yet. Well, no, because you don't have
Mhm.
blind patrons that come alone who demand it or need it and have said to you,
Yeah.
hey, but you do get a lot of others. And we know certain communities are ahead in when it comes
Mhm.
to some of that
Absolutely.
accessibility. Okay, where do
Yeah,
you want to
for
go now?
sure. Um, I want to talk about experiencing things other than, say, a TV or movie or a play. Or
Right.
so I have two really great examples, and this involves guides, actual humans who are trained as sighted guides who will escort you here and there. So this happens. Really good theater places will do this as an offering, like. You can say, okay, I'm going to be arriving on this streetcar. Could someone meet me at the streetcar stop closest to the theater and guide me in? So that's like top tier access at a theater.
Yes.
But a few
Nice.
organizations have gone past that even. So I have two examples. Last summer, the Luminato Festival in Toronto had whisper guides, and so their sort of hub main space was at a sort of downtown little urban park, and there was always things going on. And you could reserve a whisper guide, and this meant that it was someone who would meet you close to the place and guide you around and tell you what
Wow.
the
Chris,
vendors
Chris,
were,
tell us a little
describe
bit
the
about
shows.
Luminato, please, for those checking us out through YouTube and maybe aren't familiar.
Oh, yes, please. So the Luminato Festival Toronto it's been going for quite a while, and it happens in June, and it's a 10-day fiesta of arts and culture. So there's plays and concerts and shows and art installations that happen in different spots all over the city. So you can attend those at theaters that are maybe familiar to you if you live nearby. But there's also a square there, David Pico Square, that was taken over. And so every night there would be live entertainment, and there'd be vendors and people selling things and peculiar furniture and just lots of interesting things going on. Lots. So again, that has been described in podcast as well. You can Google Radio Lumi, Lumi, and that is the audio version of the Luminato Festival. And JJ and I, along with several other people, worked on making that accessible through podcasts. But what they did was they said, if you want to come down, we'll provide you a whisper guide, and they will be your sighted guide, and they'll walk you around anywhere you want to go. You decide where you go. It's not a guided tour. It's just you having a guide to escort you through. And
Wow.
they're building it's this is idea is getting some traction. So upcoming on December 8th, the Disability Collective is running a disability led holiday market. So these are all disability people with disabilities who are crafters and creators and artists and selling stuff. And there's two things about this that are really great. It's sort of in a midtown Toronto location. And the first part is that when you are a vendor like that, normally you pay to have a space, and you bring all your own tables and display things and everything that you need. What the Disability Collective has done is to recognize that disability people with disabilities automatically are facing a lot of barriers. So you don't have to pay if you're a crafter, a vendor. At the disability holiday market, you don't have to pay for your stall, and the furniture is provided. And then the second thing that they're doing, well, there's several, but JJ will be doing a guided walk, and there'll be a podcast associated with that. But again, there's an opportunity to find a volunteer. So if you go on the guided walk as through the market, a described walk as a blind or low vision person, afterwards, you can have a guide to walk you through the stalls and to help you do your shopping. And so it's
That
just
is so
taking accessible.
wonderful.
I know, it's
Well,
top level. It's
because
really
and
top
you know
level.
what's interesting too when you think about that, JJ does the walk. So we all when we go to something, well, what's here is our question. So maybe if
Mhm,
you're lucky enough to have someone, they tell you all the things, you try to retain it and whatever comes from that. If you're on a walking tour with JJ going around, he's letting you know what's there. Then you get hooked up with somebody who can walk around. You already know. You're saving that
mhm,
time. You're saving their
yep,
time. You know specifically the areas you're interested in because you went around and then got back. Now, where do you want to go? There's so much, not just, hey, it's a nice described tour. It's a described purposeful tour. You know, we've
mhm,
gone on, the walks with JJ takes you around, maybe whether it's a haunted walk, whether it's a certain area. They're beautiful because of curiosity if you want to know things and as a blind person getting them described. But this is one of those purposeful ones. I really love the idea
yes.
because you turn around and someone says, "Now, where would you like to go?" And you
Right,
know.
right. It's
Wow,
top level.
really
So,
cool.
and the podcast associated with this, there'll be one that comes out on December 1st, and it's going to be me and JJ talking about the holiday market. So, if you wanted to go, you could listen and find out what all the booths are ahead of time and even
Yeah.
plan your shopping trip. So, there's
Yes.
so much innovation going on. It's really fantastic time to be sort of working in this field, and to be there's I like to say flippantly, there's never been a better time to be blind.
And it's so true because
See,
I
no one
was
else
just
is
gonna say
laughing,
to
okay?
you,
No one else
well,
is
see
laughing, but
see, I was just gonna say to you, well, man, 20 years ago, we could sit there and say, "Well,
right?
how could I do it?" You could drop by and pick up a cassette tape, and we tell you some of the thing. "Oh, I'm not gonna do that." Now
And
you've
that's
got the stuff to
yeah,
show up in your home, described in
yeah,
such a way or told to you in such a way, and
mhm,
those means are there. So I love
yeah,
it. I love the opportunities. I love the technology helping us out in a way, and it's just going to get better and better and easier, and of course, what everybody likes to hear, cheaper and cheaper. Thanks,
right,
Chris.
right, and yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, just as a note. This is what happens with people with lived experience become part of the process. Thank you. Awesome. Really cool. Nazreen, I think as a person with vision loss, as we start talking about how different everything has to be for each person, your needs versus mine versus Ramya's
Mhm,
versus
mhm.
whomever, then that's just vision, people with vision impairment I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah, it's a whole cycle. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, and to note the different options, because nothing will work for everyone perfectly, and we speak about that all the time. There has to be those different things that, maybe a little better for me or maybe not so better this time around, but maybe for something else, "Hey, this is perfect for me," and maybe you're saying, "Well, yeah, but it could improve better," or "Not as
Yeah, and
great
I
for me,"
think
but that's okay.
yeah. Yeah. I think we need to be open-minded that it might work for me, but it might not work for you, Kels, or Ramya. And everybody has their own accommodations that we work through. And it's important to know and be open-minded about that.
You bet, Nazreen. It's tremendous. Folks, you can email us at kellyco@ami.ca. Always love to hear from you. We'd love to get your words, and whether it's on social media or emailing us. And you can also give us a call so we can hear your voice. 1-866-509-4545. I'd like to welcome into the program Tiffany Taylor. Whether it's calm seas or rough water, living on a sailboat can be both exhilarating, yeah, but can also be a little challenging. Tiffany Taylor joins us from California to tell us all about the why, the how of living full time on a. Sorry, I will say it this way: living full time on the Moth, an outbound 46 blue water cruising sailboat. I hope I did that well there, Tiffany. I hope I gave it justice. Welcome to the program.
And we're all jealous
Hi,
of you,
thank you.
Tiffany.
Yeah, very much. Wow.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, tell us first the origin story. How did you decide that living on a sailboat was for you and your husband?
Um, well, I actually met my partner Lisa, and she lived on boats before we
And I
met.
apologize. Sorry,
And
my wrong miswording here.
right, um, and so she lived on boats before we met, and said, I'm gonna fix up the sailboat and move, sail to different places, not necessarily around the world, because that I think effect creates maybe a different thought, but different places, Europe, uh, Australia, UK, etc. And we're based in California, and it's a sailboat. And so we fixed it up, and then we realized that boat wasn't maybe the right boat for us. And we bought our more long-term forever boat about 4 years ago, and we've been fixing it up and living on it. So I've been living aboard full time for 2 years, and really, I
Wow.
think it's about a way to travel and see places, because I really like traveling and seeing places where you can bring your home with you. But with that also comes a lot of projects, because we do all our own work. So, for example, I think on this boat alone, we've done something like 330 projects or something like that. So
Oh my.
it's a
Can
whole
you
new
talk a little
learning
bit
curve.
about some of those? Tell us a little bit, Tiffany, like, cause so many of us just, it's so, I don't want to say
Yeah.
alien, but you can all sit there and think, okay, I'm going to
No,
go
it
out
is.
sailing
Yeah.
on Saturday afternoon. Oh, we've got to make sure it's clean. We got to take our garbage. What kinds of
Right.
projects have to be done in this aspect? 2 years in on living on a boat.
Well, a lot of things I didn't know about either. Well, so one thing we just finished is, my partner has a background in like software and hardware design, and so she just created a system to basically monitor different systems on the boat. So, like, how do you know what the wind speed is, or the depth, or
Right.
monitor your solar? We had to do a big solar panel installation. We're going to be installing a water maker, so she just finished a big like circuit board, and all these like connections to make a basically what's called a chart plotter. So it's like a screen or a monitor that shows like your GPS and your position and your radar. But instead of paying thousands of dollars for one, we actually she created one of her own
Nice.
that'll do all that on her own. So that's been our most recent project. I kind of help out, learn where I can. Learning living on a boat, projects on a boat, making it accessible.
And the projects make obviously a little more affordable because, if anyone thinks, "Oh, well, that's a cheaper way to live," no, but it's an
Yes.
enjoyable way, and I'm sure there are some that would say, "Okay, yeah, you can cut corners here and there," but with you and Lisa doing this work the way you're doing it, and in time, I'm sure each thing takes time, but that time saves so much in finances, but mainly what I'm hearing for these projects before we get into the accessibility, safety. Do you want to touch on some of the accessibility stuff that you've wanted and brought to the table that are it's just a need that if someone else was going to do this with vision loss, you'd suggest?
Um, well, for me, actually, there aren't that many special tools, which is great. So really, it's about doing safety drills that a lot of people may not do anyway, whether they're disabled or not. But I think it's about, as a blind person specifically, like being really comfortable in like learning where things are,
Mhm.
learning how to use the radio accessibly. If you need to call for assistance, or learning. how to stop the boat, learning like you would do that whether you're disabled or not. But if you can't
Yeah.
read like your position, or you can't see if there's other boats around, then what might you do? So it's more like the regular safety procedures, and then how would you adapt that, and make sure, especially if you there's a certain thing you don't have access to, how do you get around that, if you don't have assistance?
So I've done a bit of sailing, small boats, and out on the harbor, the lake for a little bit, far from what you guys have been doing. Let's start with describe the inside of the boat a little bit for us.
Okay, so it is a 46-foot sailboat. It's not a houseboat. So a houseboat is more like a floating house, kind of on a platform, and it doesn't usually move. That's kind of a big misconception. People are like, you live in a houseboat? No, it's not a houseboat. So it's 46 feet long. It's about 13 and a half feet wide, so it's kind of narrow. It has two cabins like for sleeping that each can fit two people, and then there's like a little couch or settee that someone could sleep on, and then there's like a U-shaped, like a curved horseshoe kind of shaped sleeping area with a table. There's a galley, a kitchen, which would be the galley, and two small bathrooms, or heads as they're called. So there's kind of one main walkway, and then everything branches out on either side. And then we also have a work area, which is called the garage, but not like a car garage. It's So someone did ask us once, do you park your car on the boat? I'm like, well, it's not a ferry, so we don't, you
A
know,
big no to that one,
but
but then they must wonder, why do you
yeah,
call it the head for the bathrooms? Because 'Cause I'm not
right,
familiar with that
right.
term. Maybe because you bump your
Yeah,
head
I
for
don't know
I don't
why
know.
either. I don't know either. There's a lot of terms like, where did that come from? I don't, not sure. But the garage is like a work area, so it has a built-in like a lot of storage and like a workbench, and you can easily get to it from inside or outside in the cockpit. There's like a seat that opens up from the cockpit, so then you can kind of stand up underneath and then work in there, and then like hand things out back and forth, um,
Nice.
from someone who
Wow.
might be in the cockpit. So yeah, because if you live on a boat, especially a boat that's going to be cruising around and sailing around, you need tools. We have so many tools I've never heard of, and that's not my strong suit. So it's just like tools upon tools for all the
Wow.
different every
Man,
system. You got to know all the systems, because no one's going to come and fix it should something
right.
happen.
Yeah. You do a lot of cooking according to your blog. You enjoy it. Tightness, because every inch counts, on a boat like this, and like you say, the practicality.
Mhm.
How have you made the kitchen for yourself, the galley, more comfortable and with size? It's small, but I bet you make it work since you spend enough time in there.
Yes, you get a lot of you use a lot of things, for different in different ways. For example, we have a pressure cooker that we use a lot, and before I moved on the boat, I had an instant pot, and that you plug it in, it's electric. Well, on the boat instead, we have a pressure cooker that goes on the stove, and we have a propane stove,
Right.
and so that we also use that as our microwave, so kind of to reheat things too. So then we don't have a microwave, so you have less. We personally have less electronic. Um, kitchen gadgets.
Gadgets.
And then
Yeah.
we also have a grill outside that uses like smaller propane bottles. So when it's hot outside, for example, you might want to grill more. When it's cold outside, we have a small oven and the stove, because that will also, using propane, puts heat in the air, so it will act as a natural heater to heat up the boat. So you kind of change your cooking style depending on where you are, what you have access to. Are you actually sailing? If it's kind of rough and bouncy, you're not really going to be cooking, so you try to pre-plan, a lot of your cooking ahead of time, depending on how the weather is, or if you're doing a passage. So that's kind of pre-planned.
That's incredible. It makes so much sense. Let's talk about the traveling. I'm really curious of places you've gone, conditions that you guys have had to sail in or put in and weather through, some of the things that convinced you as well with this was the life for you.
Well, we're based in the San Francisco Bay Area, for most of the time, the last several years, and then when we bought this boat, and then in the last year we moved to more of like the Central Valley of California, kind of near Sacramento, and we are actually on the San Joaquin River, which is a big delta, with the Sacramento River. And so this is much different. So like the San Francisco Bay Area is ocean, and it's very, very windy in a lot of places. So
Right.
like some wind there, 25 or 30 knots. Some people will abandon their boat at that speed, in other places because you're not used to
Wow.
it. But here,
Yeah, yeah.
that's like an average day. And so it is a good place to learn how to sail because you're already starting out like, well, this might be hard, but then in other places it'll be easier. And then on the river now, it can be windy, but it's generally much more calm. And we're at a marina currently because we're working on some more projects, and it's easier to be at a dock than at a on anchor. And we do have a car, but we will be selling the car this summer when we leave here. But the marina has a lot of nature. There's actually a field right next door with there's a field next door with sheep in it. There's
Oh. Oh,
a
wow.
they have a community garden at the marina. They give out, they have chickens where you can give their out their eggs to the guests. Lots of nature. There's like lots and lots of birds you can hear and frogs and fish. And so I just, was saying the other day, I never thought I'd hear sheep on a boat because I assumed like,
Yeah.
well, a boat's going to
Yeah.
be like on a beach or something.
Right, yes, that's kind of what an interesting combination. So when you talk
Yeah.
about okay, let me think here, I'm gonna ask this first food-wise, because, of course, that's always on one's mind. Um, do you have to change it up at all other than what you were talking about weather-wise? Have you guys had to change your diet of the things you were okay with bringing on board or having to have on board, like you say, if you're out and there's rough water,
Right.
or just for your diet because you're on the boat all the time? Anything particular?
We haven't yet because we haven't done as much like really much passages yet, like overnight or anything, because we've been working on the boat. But we're planning on doing
Mhm.
that this summer. We're going to go down the coast, spend the summer in the Channel Islands, and then winter in Mexico.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and so it's really changing it depending on where you're shopping. If you're traveling every couple days, or you might stock up for a week or two. We have a refrigerator, a small freezer, and then quite a lot of like dry storage. And this boat has been around the world before we got it with the previous owners. So if you're crossing an ocean, for example, that might take you a month.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
depends on, do you know how to fish, which I don't, but we'll see how that goes. A lot of people do fish as they're sailing. So your produce first, but then we're in Mexico or cruising around to maybe the South Pacific or something. You might be in a lot more remote places because we want to go to more remote places that aren't as many, like we like some touristy stuff and seeing places, but we really want to see the local cultures and go to more off the beaten path. So that means we're going to be eating what we can get. So it is kind of like, what are the things you really like? What might you stock up maybe when you're in the US before you leave?
Right, before you
And
move
there's a
out.
lot of resources on the internet and a lot of other sailors who've done this that can kind of help you. Like there's whole like provisioning, like spreadsheets of like how much do you really need of this item. Do and then you change it over time. Like actually, we didn't really need all that rice, or actually it's really hot, so we're eating less. Or sailing can be really tiring if the weather's bad, so it's like you need to eat more calories. Or is it cold? That might change how much food you want. And a lot changes where you are in the world. How hot is it? How cold is it? All those type of things. What can you even find at the store?
How much do you have to keep your ballast in mind when you are planning if you guys are heading out, whether it's an ocean cruising or just a long journey, how much does that come into play?
How much does What was your question? How
Your
much does the what
ballast,
come into
yeah,
play?
yeah, how much does it
Oh,
you have to worry about your ballast and the things that you bring on board, that you need to take with you, weight-wise?
yes. So, um, I mean, really, it's um not as much of a concern. More of it is really like a lot of it is the space. So the boat
Mhm.
is meant to hold
Mhm.
can hold quite a bit, but she is pretty sturdy. Of course, you don't want to load it down with too many heavy things, but
Right.
when you have so many tools and things, that adding food isn't going to necessarily make that much of a difference. But
Much
if you
of
have
a
like
difference.
full propane, we have two propane tanks, we have two water tanks, we have two like bathroom tanks, we have four diesel tanks. So if everything is full and everything's loaded, are you using extra bottled water? Are you buying a lot of canned foods? Do you have a lot of bottle? But that's not. It's more of like the space and how you're going to fit it in, or things are they going to roll around? Are they going to, you have to worry about like metal, like aluminum cans can get holes in them, or salt water will damage things. The boat rock glass that's gonna break. You have to secure it, or not have that much glass. A card or paper can get moldy or can break up. You like a lot of things will be out of packaging before. Like if you get a big cereal box, the box isn't actually that useful. So you might take the bag out of the box,
Just
and
the
then you
bag,
have less
yes.
cardboard. Right.
Yeah,
So, like, how do you
and
condense
thinking of those
things?
things. Right, okay.
Mhm,
Wow, that's
mhm.
great. I'm gonna ask the big question that people are wondering because 'cause we're all sitting there saying, "Ocean, sailboat, oh." What
Yeah.
is there or was there the thing you were the most fearful of taking this on and doing, or maybe having the back? I obviously understand that there's always gonna be things you are going on a cruise, you're going out, you have to keep in mind so many different things and things can happen. Is there anything that you've had to you feel get either a little under control or accept that, yep, that could happen or that's a concern, but I you live with that?
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of checklists which help, and a lot of resources online, and people who've done this and have experiences to share. And there's also like boat shows, even like in person,
Yeah.
where or online, where you can like see people who've traveled places or who've worked on these projects. Lots of YouTube research. I mean, lots of blogs and books. I think really it's learning how to live on a boat, and then it's also like sailing the boat and realizing like your to-do list will never be done. You're never done learning. um and so at some point you have to go, otherwise you'll never leave. So I think it's like realizing you don't have to know all the answers at once, because if you have that mindset, it's easily way too overwhelming of like, oh my gosh, I can't even figure out how to how to use the sails right, or I got to learn like how do you
Mm,
coil the lines, or how do you use the radio. So one blog I was recently reading was saying, you have to be okay with not being good at something, especially when you
Ah,
start out. And
wow.
that can be hard to say like, I did that wrong, but it's a learning experience, and not just give up like, well, so what is your line of, is this worth it because you're learning something and it's going to take you to another place? And when is it like, maybe this task isn't for me, or maybe I really do need a different way, or maybe we divide the labor differently. So when is a challenge? And then when is it like, this needs a different solution?
Fantastic.
So
Tiffany,
it's not a
what piece of
specific
advice.
task, maybe it's just
Yeah,
overall.
but boy, what a nice piece of advice and a way to calm yourself down because that is why you're doing what you're doing, and having that, yeah, we have a plan, but we don't have to be stuck to a rigid schedule, something that so many people, and I think
Yes.
as we started, envy, of course. Thank you so
Definitely with
much for the talk.
schedules.
Yeah.
Schedules
Oh, we
schedules is the
appreciate you.
biggest enemy, so
Yeah, and the
yeah.
one thing to get out of life, if you can do that, it's so and are willing to do all the other things, the maintenance, the
Mhm.
preparing, the taking the time, the schedule, the looking at charts, everything that you have to do to get ready to be able to enjoy that I don't wanna say leisure because you got so much going on there, so much to do,
It's a
and it
balance
sounds
of both.
so enjoyable. It is, and so
Mhm.
enjoyable too. Thanks, Tiffany.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, wow, that was awesome. We thank Tiffany for joining us, and the next time you weigh anchor, we wish you fair winds and following seas, much the same. Appreciate it. Tiffany out on the boat, out in California, absolutely amazing sailboat, and they'll be heading off on the journey, heading eventually down to Mexico and beyond. Nazreen, if there's somewhere in the
that
world or
sounds
a
so
way that you
exciting.
would love to be able to kind of hang back, take it easy, or had the means to be able to say, I want to do this and have this kind of life like they are on the boat, is there something particular that comes to your mind?
I wanna have beach houses all over, that's a dream of mine.
If you had the means
Just
to do it, beach houses, really?
if I had them no,
Wow.
I honestly I would just, you know, I wouldn't say backpack around the world because I'm being realistic. I have so many layers. I can't just take a backpack, but I do want to travel all around Europe specifically. Specifically, that's on my bucket list. But I definitely want to retire somewhere in like Thailand or something like that. That would be. I always watch vloggers go on either like sailboats or take the train places like all over the world. It's so exciting. But Kelly, I can't. You were mentioning that you went on a sailboat once. I can't imagine you going on a sailboat with
On a
your
sailboat?
fedoras. Let's be
Oh
realistic.
gosh, oh yeah. Oh gosh,
Did they
yeah. I
fly
would do
away?
that, and they would argue with me too on the sailboat because you can sit back, you can enjoy the ride, or and I know we didn't get into a lot of this of the duties, what what things Tiffany and Lisa have to do on board and that kind of thing, on that daily or when they're out. And I remember being asked, "Well, don't you want to get up here?" And Kelly, no, I'll steer a bit. I don't mind that. Otherwise, I want to listen to this baseball game I'm listening to. I totally like to enjoy what Tiffany was talking about, being able to hear the sounds around me, whether it's other boats,
Yeah.
planes going over. or in their case, sheep in the field next to where they're anchored. It's really tremendous. Let's put it on the poll. Niz, let's see what other people out there
Love it.
may wish to kind of do if they had the means and the time and the will to be. And I think that's everything. Tiffany at least have the will to do things the way they're doing it. And if you missed any of this, you can check it out via the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, and hear our conversation with Tiffany. Do that from your platform of choice. I think that's really cool. Also, check out the poll that Niz is going to put out there. And while you're listening to the podcast or subscribing, if you wouldn't mind giving us a rating and review. Well, it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for the soup showdown. Um, let's dive right into the great soup debate. This is canned convenience versus homemade goodness. Plus, we'll get to a dollar store today organizing fridge hacks today as we welcome in our chef, Mary Mammoliti, who is going to be talking to us about how to she ladles out um expert info. You know I'm laughing. Rumya wrote this, or shall I say ChatGPT did, or Mary did. Mary, who wrote this?
I did.
Okay.
And it wasn't ChatGPT, it's me.
Okay. Well, the ladling is great. I just looked at it like that is actually really good. And I'm not knocking you because I'm sitting here. Hey, let's sail into this at the top of the show. So you kind of have that fun with everyone, and I love that. And I apologize because I should have read that a little bit better. Now, Mary, we
Oh
know
gosh, no big deal.
soup of the fall is one of those stick to the ribs things we talk about. We've got to settle this discussion.
Just
Is it worth the time, Mary, to go homemade, or just should we not be so hard on those canned soups and give them a little more love than we tend to?
Well, I mean, let's talk this out. Let's talk about the pros and cons of both. So let's start with some canned soup. For
Okay.
me, canned soup, it's convenient, it's affordable, it's got a
Right.
long shelf life, so it makes it like that great pantry staple.
And
Let's
is
get into the
not
cons.
isn't it supposed to be? Like that's to me what I know
Yes.
of a canned soup. Hurry up, throw a soup on, or we're in a hurry, or here's old standby. Oh, well, we got to go out and shop,
I
Yeah.
so
don't
put a soup on
know.
the table.
Yeah,
No?
it's that time crunch. So you got no time, you're gonna grab that can of soup, which I wholeheartedly understand and I get it because I've done it, right? And I always have to have a couple of cans in my pantry because those are my emergency.
Okay.
Um, but the other side of that is, I mean, there are cons to the canned soup, right? Because you can get high sodium. Many contain
Yeah.
probably about 700 to 800 milligrams per cup. Now, that quickly adds up to more than or nearly half of our recommended daily intake of sodium, which I
Wow.
think, don't quote me on it, is 1500 milligrams. But we're getting there, right? So there's a lot of sodium in them. Um, BPA concerns. Some people
And
may
we
have,
often
yeah,
add more salt to them because you don't taste the sodium the same way.
that's the
Generally, a
thing.
lot of people, unless you're someone who never uses salt.
Yeah, and a lot of people like zhuzhing up their canned soups. So they add in a couple of spices that they like that taste great to them. Um, and they just want to kind of amp it up a little bit, and salt is one of them. And then you've got the BPA problems, the concerns. Now I wouldn't say problems because some cans they are lined with this chemical, but it many brands now are BPA free. Like we've come a long way with this. So just
Right.
check the labels, and there are options out there. Then we get into cream-based soups, and often these contain a lot of saturated fats, and that can increase your cholesterol. So that bad cholesterol that we don't want. And that I mean, if you eat it constantly, I get that, but this is just a couple of things to note, a couple of cons to note about the canned soups. Move on
Right,
to
as you're
homemade.
having your first and
Yeah.
second bowls of soup. I mean, that used to always be, "You
Bowl of
want more
stew.
soup?" So there goes all your salt,
Yeah.
there goes your,
Yeah.
sodium for the now, Nazreen, let's put you on the spot here because you said
Mm.
one of the things that you don't mind doing is maybe dressing up a soup.
Yeah.
What things
Yeah.
will you throw in there? A canned
Oh, I
soup.
love dressing. Okay, let's talk about canned soup for a second. For me personally, it's very sketchy for me to use canned soups. I don't trust it. And I
Oh.
can't read the label properly for me, so I
Mhm.
just don't go to canned soups at all. I like the homemade goodness personally.
Oh.
Just cuz
Okay,
I feel like I don't trust anything in a can. I don't know why.
okay. But if you
Just
have to
the
have it in a
idea of
can,
it being
do you
closed
dress it
off
up
the
or
whole
do you
time,
dress up the homemade?
I would definitely dress it up. I would not keep it just plain. No, I would, add all the spices in the world, gotta add the carrots, gotta add these veggies, gotta add these chicken pieces. I think this it could turn into something beautiful if
Yeah, and
you
actually, I
you
thought
do it
she was
right.
gonna add things that, Mary would say, "Thumbs down, that makes your soup even worse." Okay, Mary. So,
Like what?
Nazreen's adding stuff that you would I don't know what kinda junk really, like more salt or something like that, but Mary, she's out talking about things that you would put in that homemade soup and taking time.
I mean, absolutely, absolutely, and I've done a little bit of the work for you because I've gone ahead and I found 5 cans of, canned
Mm,
soup that I think are great to try, great to have in your pantry, but we'll get to that because I wanna talk about the homemade, like we just talked about. Homemade
right.
soup. Some of the pros, like we've mentioned, you got complete control over your ingredients. You adjust the sodium levels because we just talked about that. You avoid preservatives, additives, and you can customize it depending on your dietary needs, right? Pro, all these pros. They're cost effective in the long term. And they're cost effective because you make large batches of it. You can freeze portions for later use, for later consumption, let's say. So those are a lot of the pros. Cons, there aren't many when it comes to homemade soup, but it requires more time and effort to prepare. So you have to plan and then you have to have fresh ingredients on hand. So there's a lot of planning involved in that. It's not just you get home late, you're tired, what do I eat? Let me grab this, unless you have it in the freezer. So
Mhm.
basically, some of my takeaways for both are they're both canned homemade soups. They have a place for any healthy lifestyle and then depending on your needs and schedule. But like I mentioned, there are some canned soups out there that do check a lot of the boxes and would be great to have as pantry staples. Kelly, I didn't ask you, do you like canned soup?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to like probably the ones that are a little less, healthy, if you wanna even use that term. I like the butternut squash and pumpkin soups, and I do like tomato. Not a really big vegetable soup person.
But there are butternut squash, pumpkin that are
Oh,
low
yeah.
sodium, and they have a lot of the checks and bops to them. So I totally agree with that. I get it. The ones that I'm mentioning, it's just a few that I just came to mind when I was shopping in the grocery store. So there's Amy's organic lentil vegetable soup. Now, Amy, if you're vegan, Amy's is a vegan soup option. It's got organic ingredients. It's free from gluten and dairy, and it's rich in fiber, which is always great, and protein because the lentil.
Okay. And I
Campbell's
think what
healthy request.
we
Yeah.
look at a lot with the soups too is, are they hearty, right? And that's kind of what I've from
Well,
my
that's the
life experience
thing.
when I have soup, I need something that's hearty because then I may not necessarily need the second bowl of liquidy soup.
Right. Or a grilled cheese maybe with it. But
Yeah, yeah.
a little garlic bread. Are you a dunker,
Oh,
not a dunker? There's so
oh,
many
no, no.
conversations to be had.
Yeah,
I
for
always get
sure.
hungry with Mary's segment. That's
Then I'm doing my
always
job.
get hungry.
What about Campbell's? Campbell's healthy request chicken noodle soup. We all love a chicken noodle soup, right? It's a lower in sodium
Yes,
option. The soup offers a classic chicken noodle flavor, and it's got that reduced sodium, which is great, and it is
Mm-mm, good.
tasty. I mean, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I always
Yeah.
make my own soups, but these are great to have as a backup if you prefer to make homemade soup. Or if you want to stock your pantry, these are great. There's Healthy Choice chicken and rice soup. This is another hearty one. Hey, Kelly, where it's got the soup, it's got tender chicken, rice,
Oh, yeah.
vegetables.
Oh, yeah.
It's got the savory broth with it. So it's a low fat option and it's also low in cholesterol.
And filling.
Then and filling, because that's
You
what we
got that
said. We
rice
want
and
it to
stuff
be
to help you
filling.
out, right? Yeah, hearty enough.
That's right. Last one, Habitat pea soup with smoked ham. So this one here, it's got all the flavors. It's a hearty soup. It's made with peas, smoked ham. It's got a good source of protein and it's got a lot of fiber. So,
Right.
I mean, you've got some
sounds filling.
options there when it comes to canned.
Um
Mhm.
I used to hate pea soup. My father was a big pea soup person, so my mother would make it, and then somebody told me about having ham in it, and I tried that when my mom said, "Well, you don't even think you'd like it with the ham in it?" "What?" ham in it. And I tried that
Yeah.
because in my head it was just the same as a vegetarian soup, except you're even more boring and just had peas in it. And I'm like, oh
Mhm.
no, man. And the peas to me just they don't it doesn't quite taste right. You throw ham in there, Mary, it makes such a difference in offsetting what as a kid, ew, it's like too adult tasting. Like it tastes like something only an adult would eat. I would never go
Mhm.
near. But when you throw the ham in and what that ham does, so in this
Mhm.
case, do you feel it makes that difference as opposed to if you're not a big pea soup person? Is this the night and day difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
It also adds a different flavor profile. So whether you're eating canned
Mhm.
soup or making your own, adding that little bit of ham changes the flavor up a bit. Get a little smoky flavor if you get smoked ham. If you use pancetta, if you use a bacon, it all adds an extra layer of flavor and it gives you that little more bite. So you don't feel like you're eating just the vegetable.
It
awesome.
does make a difference when you add meat to it. It makes it
Mhm.
more flavorful. That's what I prefer.
But you have so many good choices there, Mayor, for people who don't, who whether they are watching the gluten, whether, they're vegetarian. There are some
Mhm.
great choices here, and I love that there's more available. What's your A1 dollar store organizing hack for us?
So this one here I thought was pretty cool and pretty genius. It is a sponge holder with the suction cup on the back. So you know those ones that you put at the side of your sink, um, that holds the sponge, your dish soap, your dish sponge.
Yeah.
Take one of those, pop it into your refrigerator, pop it onto the side wall of your refrigerator. Use it to store anything small. So you know those packets of condiments if you do takeout, where you get like the soy sauce, the plum
Mhm.
sauce, um, ketchup, little ketchup squeeze packets.
Right.
Use
Yep.
that to keep them all in one place. So it doesn't kind of roam around your fridge, you're not searching for
Yeah.
it. You can
I
Interesting.
you
thought
you
I had one
I'm
more.
not
I saw it
telling
when
you
I was
on it.
getting milk. And it is so true. And as a blind person, I know how often I've chased stuff. Mayor, wonderful stuff as usual.
Thanks. This
Let
has
me
been
see if I can do
fun.
your let me see if I can do your writing justice here. Whether you're cracking
Uh-oh.
open a can or simmering from scratch, there's a soup for every season. Mary has given us the perfect recipe of really being able to make the best of both. Not bad. Not bad, if I do say so
Sounds great.
myself. Mary Mammoliti, thank you. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Always fun, and Nazreen says it for sure. Always get hungry. Yeah. Now, as you're hungry, ladies and gentlemen, start thinking of your dinner. But if you need that little tide me over, have some soup. Nazreen Abdul Majid, thank you. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the show. Speaking of said show, Michael Fair reviews The Tunnel Runners Drama. This is from the Play Me podcast. And AMI's Leanne Brown stops by to justify her love of all things Snoopy. Sounds like a personal problem. Capped with her Snoopy-themed wedding. Ha! What about Woodstock? Snoopy's friend. Where the heck was he? Anyway, we'll find out next show. I'm waving at you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.